Welcome and anchor down from the Vanderbilt campus. Jimmy and Zach are back for podcast number 9 of JT and Zeke on West End, and we are pissed off. Zach, I'm not going to lie, it's not the happiest day to be a Commodore fan. Last night I was rolling in my bed just thinking about how disappointing of a game it was, and as I was rolling in my bed last night, I pondered this very interesting question. What if this year's team were to face last year's team? I want you all to think about that. Because at first I had an easy answer to what the game would end up playing out as, but as I thought about it more, it was very difficult to think of what would happen.
Yeah, the fact that it's even a debate says a lot.
Yeah, but for today's podcast, we're going to let out a lot of our anger, going to recap the game against South Carolina, and mention the few bright spots from the game.
Yeah, big thing about the game, quarterback play, there's no disguising it. You can't turn the ball over 4 times as the quarterback and expect to win against anybody. South Carolina has the worst defense in the league, and we really looked like we couldn't move the ball at all, didn't know what we were doing out there. And by we, I don't want to drag the rest of the guys into this. Darius Sims, great game. He's slowly becoming a Gamecock killer. Ralph Webb looked good in spots too. It's just McCrary might just not have what it takes to be an SEC quarterback. We've backed him until now. I feel like it's time to make a change.
You watch the game, and it's disappointing, but it all comes down to one player. I hate to pin it on one guy, but it's all on Johnny McCrary. Everyone watching has the same thoughts. He's just not getting the job done. And as I think about it, I think this guy just does not have what I call the it factor. There's a lot of players like Tim Tebow, Patton Robinette, who just have it. They have the swagger to get the game done in the clutch and win. And Johnny just doesn't have it. And in the history of following sports, at least in my experience, if you guys have any counter arguments to this, please comment it. But in my experience following sports, I've never seen someone who does not have it as much as Johnny doesn't. And to add to that, I've never seen someone who doesn't have it that was able to develop into a winning quarterback. It just doesn't happen.
You can't teach that. You can't teach the it factor. Tim Tebow, not the most talented quarterback, was able to win an NFL playoff game because he has it. He knows how to win, and it pains me, and it probably pains him even more. Patton Robinette, there's no doubt in my mind if we had him starting, if we had him healthy all year so far, at worst we're 4-2. Probably win one of the 2 games against Georgia or Ole Miss also.
Especially Georgia.
Yeah, definitely could have won that game. It just comes down to not making mistakes. Like when we got backed up toward the end of the game at 1st and 28, I said to myself, why don't we just punt? Nothing good is going to come of this before Johnny just throws one right to the defender.
Put me in at quarterback, I'll kneel it. I'd be too afraid to even hand it off, but we'd probably be better off just kneeling the ball every single play.
Spike it 3 times, yeah.
Yeah, I don't care. But with that said, something needs to change at quarterback. We've given McCrary 6 games already, and he's proven to us time in and time out that he can't get the job done. One exception was maybe the Ole Miss game, which we still lost. It's time to make changes.
And that game doesn't look quite as good anymore after Ole Miss lost to Memphis this week, too. But I guess we'll run down the options. I'll just list them. Stick with McCrary. I do not like that idea. Nope. Bad idea. Freeback, do not like that idea.
Terrible idea.
All right, now there's 2 more options. People are very opposed to this one. I'll say it anyways. Burn Shermer's redshirt. Even if on paper the coaches don't think he'll do as good of a job as McCrary's doing, you need to change something. You can't let a guy just think he has job security when he's playing as poorly as McCrary is. And then the solution that we like the best, something some people may have thought of, some people might not have thought of. Number 8, Ronald Monroe. He was a high school quarterback, had 3,300 passing yards and 56 total touchdowns his senior season. Those are some pretty insane numbers. And I know you like Shermer. You want to talk about him?
Yeah, so going into the season, the ideal situation was that McCrary would be good enough to play and that we could preserve Shermer's redshirt season, get 4 full seasons out of him if he's good enough to start next year. That was the ideal situation, but we've given McCrary 6 games. It hasn't worked out. I think it's time to at least give Shermer a copious amount of reps in practice, and if he proves in practice that he is good enough to at least just have a chance to compete in the SEC, we have to try it out. He may be good enough to just transform this offense.
Yeah, burning the red shirt, I believe, is not as big of a deal as some people think. It's a lot worse to go 2-10, kill the recruiting class. That would be very detrimental to the team going forward. We don't know if Shermer's going to be the solution. It's worth a shot, though, because McCrary definitely isn't. A guy we would rather see play, Ronald Monroe, would be very exciting. He's currently a receiver. You could find him on Twitter. 8 scores again, I think, is his Twitter handle. Pretty cool. It would be fun. I will just say that. It would be fun to see him play, run the ball mostly, run the option maybe with Sims. It would be an offense that you believe is not too hard to install in the middle of the season.
It would be extremely exciting to see Monroe at quarterback. And yeah, as you just mentioned, it's pretty easy to install these offenses.
It's like a high school offense.
Yeah, high schools often run the Wildcat because they don't have a QB that can throw that well.
Does that sound familiar? Sounds a little familiar.
Yeah, exactly. You only need like 10 plays. Most of the offense is improvising, honestly. You design a pass play with the intention of running the ball almost, and then you have your run plays to either Sims or Webb.
You tell him to only throw it if the guy is absolutely wide open. This might decrease our total yards, but we both agree we would definitely give up yards if it just meant not turning the ball over. How good our defense is, we could win games putting up 13.
Definitely, and there's probably 3 of our losses so far could have been wins if we just minimize the turnovers. If the ball is not in the air, it's very unlikely that the other team will somehow end up with it, and that's just what we need to change. We need to minimize turnovers. It could make a huge difference, and Monroe's a really fast, athletic guy. It's very possible, especially against defenses like South Carolina's and probably Houston's, that he could break out and rush for over 100 yards, maybe pass for over 100 too. It could be extremely exciting. It could, provide that spark in the offense that we've been waiting for all season.
Yeah, the way that this could work, I would have him go shotgun every single snap unless it was 3rd or 4th and inches and you were going to have him sneak it. Have him go shotgun. It's a lot easier for a guy who hasn't played QB in 2 years to not have to worry about dropping back. Have him shotgun with either Webb or Sims next to him. If you have Webb next to him in the shotgun, 1 or 2 tight ends, have Sims come across about half the plays faking a jet sweep, or have him in the backfield faking a handoff. People have to respect Sims. He has true SEC speed.
Spot on. I love those formations. I really do think that there's a distinct possibility that would work. Monroe should really, or at least our offense should probably model itself after something like Navy and Keenan Reynolds, or even Houston and Greg Ward Jr. I know Greg Ward Jr. was their starting wide receiver last year for the first 5 games. All of a sudden, they put him in at quarterback. At most, he had 1 week to practice. And all of a sudden, that offense became a monster. And now they're nationally ranked. We should model our offense after that. Run first. Pass the ball if someone's wide open. It's an easy pass to make. Offense moves downfield really easily. You minimize turnovers. It could really work.
Yeah, even if the offense didn't move the ball downfield really easily, you'd have to believe that if the ball was in Monroe, Sims, or Webb's hands for every single play, even Sherfield a little bit, there'd be at least 2 or 3 big plays each game, and that's really all our defense needs. 2 or 3 big plays to get us into field goal range, one of them possibly going for a touchdown. That's all we need. All we need is minimize turnovers and do that.
Before the season even started, the main reason I was high on Ludwig is I believed he would get the ball in the hands of our playmakers. And so far this season, we've really struggled to do that. We want the ball in the hands of Sims more often. Yesterday, we finally saw that. We want the ball in the hands of Sherfield more often. Some games we see it. Yesterday, we didn't, partially because of dropped passes. But we have athletes on the offense that need the ball in their hands, and we need a way to get the ball in their hands. If we put Monroe at quarterback, he's an athlete. The ball would be in his hands. He'd be able to easily get it to Sims, Sherfield, the other guys. It could really change this offense.
Completely agree with everything that you just said. Another guy who could possibly do it, Trent Sherfield, who's also a quarterback in high school. We'd love to keep him at receiver, though. He's proven that he can be good at that spot. Also, Monroe is slightly better at throwing the ball if he needed to do that.
And let's not forget Stankovic. I'm not exactly sure what the situation is with his injury, but if you haven't watched his high school film, the guy kind of looks like Johnny Manziel. I almost said McCrary.
Yeah, Johnny Football.
That would be a bad thing if he looked like Johnny McCrary. But yeah, he looked like Johnny Football in his high school highlights. The guy would just run all over the place, change directions, improvise like crazy, and score. if he's healthy anytime soon, he should definitely get reps at practice, and he can throw pretty well too. Definitely a possibility and something we should consider.
Yeah, I usually hate it when the media and fans try to pin every victory and every loss on the quarterback. 90% of the time, they're wrong, and it's more of a whole team effort. This is really one situation where you can say there's one guy, if he played better, we would be in a very, very good situation now.
I actually slightly disagree with you on the QB point you made. I do believe football is a QB-driven game, and almost, at every single level, how good the QB is determines how good a team can be. At least that's my take on it. But I think we can both agree that our QB isn't good, and that's what's holding us back.
I think the one thing, going back to what you said about the it factor, Tim Tebow, not a good NFL QB, but he was able to get the job done. I think that's more of it than skill. You need to find somebody with the it factor, somebody who's a winner, somebody who protects the ball.
Yep, completely agree with that. Johnny McCreary does not have it. Hopefully Ronald Monroe would. Maybe Kyle Shermer would. Someone else on the team must have it, or at least to a greater degree than Johnny McCreary does.
To at least some degree. And we spent most of the time talking about the quarterback situation. Well-deserved, but there are some bright spots coming out of the game. Zach Cunningham might be one of the best. Actually, I will say he is one of the best linebackers in the conference. He should be in the conversation for all SEC when the year is over.
Yeah, Zach Cunningham could easily mold himself into a first, second, third round draft pick if he puts on 15 pounds or so and continues to play with the intensity that he has. He is all over the place getting tackles left and right. I've loved what I've seen.
So many tackles for loss. Also, Ryan White's a guy who's really stepping up in recent weeks, partly due to Andrew Williamson's injury. He's been getting time. He's a guy who's going to play safety for us down the road when Williamson and McIntosh both graduate this year. Ryan White's a guy who's making an impact both in the passing game and in the running game.
Dude, that forced fumble yesterday just showed this guy might be 5'9", 190. He's a little man. He hits like a big dude.
He has it. He has the heart.
He has it.
Maybe
exactly.
He should play QB.
Put him at QB, please. But yeah, I'm not at all concerned about losing our safeties, or at least I'm not concerned about having Ryan White start next year is what I should say. I love what I've seen from him.
Oh, me too. Definitely. Looking forward, we're definitely going to do a full breakdown of Missouri later in the week. It's hard for us to predict a victory right now if McCrary's the quarterback. We really just want something to be excited about, whether it be Shermer or Monroe or somebody else that we haven't even thought of. We need something different, something that's going to put fans in the seats, something that's going to keep the defense interested as well.
Let's make games enjoyable to watch. They're not enjoyable to watch anymore. Yesterday was
painful.
It was the most painful thing ever. Slowly but surely, Johnny McCreary was just stabbing me deeper and deeper every play. It was terrible. But yeah, Mizzou, it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, and I know you wanted to talk about this year's team versus last year's team. Who you got if that's a game?
Well, when I first thought about it last night, I was thinking about how much we've improved since last season. And my first instinct was that we'd win by 40 points. And then I thought about it more and realized we've only put up we put up 10 points against South Carolina, 12 against Western Kentucky, 17 against MTSU, who let up 34 against Florida International, a team that doesn't have a single player capable of being on our offense. I mean, if those guys were to send their high school film to us, we'd just throw it in the trash. We wouldn't even watch it. That's how much better our offense should be than FIU's. Yet we only scored 17 against MTSU, and we were lucky to score 17. With that said, it's hard for me to see our offense this year scoring much against last year's, mediocre defense. I think the game would end up being close just because of the quarterback issues that we have.
Could you agree that it's possible there'd be more turnovers than points in the game?
It may be that there are twice as many turnovers as points in the game. The only reason there maybe wouldn't be is that a lot of the turnovers would create points. So I bet there would be more defensive points than offensive points, though, and that's so sad.
I'd love to take this year's team 10 out of 10 times. If last year's team had Robinette, it's a really hard question. If last year's team also had McCrary, I just think he's going to play equally poorly, and then this year's defense is slightly better, so they make more plays. Last year's team with Robinette might be a toss-up, though, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, exactly. As I mentioned earlier, Robinette has it, and we know that this year's team plays close games, so chances are it would be a close game. At the end, the final 2 minutes or so, Robinette would probably lead last year's team to victory over this year's team. I mean, McCreary doesn't have it. He can't finish. Robinette can. I think that would be the determining factor.
Yep, and that brings us back to our main point of this episode of the podcast, change. That's what needs to happen on West End right now. Given that last year's team might beat us with McCreary, we need to change it, because if we knew we were going into that game against last year's team with a different quarterback situation, be it Shermer, be it Monroe, we'd probably be hopeful, and I would probably, without ever seeing them play, take this year's team.
Absolutely. Let's make this offense enjoyable to watch. I'm sick of all the pain of watching McCreary. Put in Monroe. It could provide the spark that we need. I want to see it.
I would love to see it. If you see Mason, see Ludwig, see anybody that's part of Vanderbilt athletics throughout the week, tweet at them all. Yep. We want Ronald Monroe. It would be cool. At least we could just say that. It would be cool to make it more interesting.
It can't hurt. It can't possibly hurt.
Agreed.
I mean, worst case scenario. I don't even know.
Worst case scenario? I guess it would just be things are the same. Less yards, but less turnovers. So the scores probably turn out, I'd say better. If you average 150 fewer yards a game, had three fewer turnovers a game, you probably win that game against South Carolina. Our defense probably just holds them.
Yep. Well, I think that's all we have for today.
That's it. If you haven't followed us so far, at VU Sports Podcast on Twitter.
Yep, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel also.
On Wednesday or Thursday, we'll have Missouri.
By Thursday.
By Thursday, we'll have a Missouri preview up, predict that game, and probably look forward also.
Yep, thanks for tuning in, and anchor down.
Anchor down.